everyone. My name is Anna Lompriere and this is Jules O'Neill, and we are the Wayfinders for the Cornwall Memory Cafe Network. Oh, hello everybody. Here we are again. It's the 6th, is it, Jules? Podcast that we've shared now, and we are very honoured to have Vicky Brown here with us, who is an awesome, amazing psychiatrist and consultant for older people living in Cornwall. And I think you're a Cornish woman born and bred. We're going to learn a little. We're going to learn a little bit more about you, and thank you so much for giving us your precious time, Vicky. So I'm going to hand it straight over to you and ask you the first question, which is, can you tell us a little bit of your story and how you got into the work that you do, and maybe give us a brief outline on the work that you've been doing?
Thank you very much. I am an old age psychiatrist, which means I specialise in looking after older people, and I came into that after going to medical school. I am, as you say, a Cornish girl from Penzance, well, St Just, and went to school in Penzance, and I wanted to get as far away as I could, so I went to Edinburgh, and then I got homesick and I came back. While I was in Edinburgh, I felt drawn to psychiatry. I was just really interested in people and their stories, and that's what took me into psychiatry. And then again, drawn by stories, really. I really liked the stories of older people. They'd lived longer, and at that stage they'd lived through the war, they'd fought in interesting places, or they'd been at home and kept the home fires burning, and so their stories were just so interesting, and that's really what drew me into old age psychiatry.
Wow.
Then prevention really came about because I started in psychiatry in 1993, and the first drug for dementia came out in 1997. And in a very quick succession, 3 drugs came out for dementia: Aricept, rivastigmine and galantamine. And then shortly afterwards, another one, memantine. And since then, there's been nothing. And those drugs, they're okay. They're not brilliant. They're okay. But there's been nothing at all to treat dementia that has actually got onto the market in the UK. So there have been several false dawns with drugs that might fight amyloid, but they've always turned out not to be safe enough. There's the new monoclonal antibodies that you've probably heard about in the news from last year, but they're still not available. It struck me that if we can't treat it, we've got to prevent it. So that sent me down the prevention route, and I've been I got into that through the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, went to their conference in 2019, and there was an absolutely amazing talk by Professor Robert Elwood. Yeah, so there was an amazing study by Professor Robin Elwood of Caerphilly, and what they'd done was they'd noticed that people with particular lifestyles had a reduced risk of dementia of about 68% compared to other people, which is obviously fantastic and just shows what can be achieved. So that's how I came to be here.
Wow. Gosh, my brain is firing off in so many different directions. Is it yours as well, Jules?
Definitely, yeah. Wow. So you talk about prevention, obviously the earlier the better when we start making life changes. But do you think, there's a cutoff point, you definitely need to start making these changes to actually notice an effect on your, chances of getting dementia, would you say? So
the Lancet paper in 2020, which is a really big paper on preventing dementia, so it's never too early and it's almost never too late. So even when someone's got mild cognitive impairment, it looks like we can probably reduce their risk of going on to develop dementia, or possibly just slow down the rate that they get dementia. There are certainly studies that show you can slow down the rate of dementia progressing. But ideally, you want to have made a change by middle age, I think. But it's never too late. If you haven't done it by middle age, you know, still have a go, because there are studies that have shown changes for people in their 70s.
Wow. I'm fascinated to hear a little bit more. I've not heard this before about an antibody, and that this was in the news. What's all that about, Vicky?
So in the autumn last year, there was a big rush of news from press releases from the drug companies about these 3 new drugs that are monoclonal antibodies. What that means is that they've harnessed cells from the body to just create one species of antibody. So an antibody is like a key that can unlock or lock something. And so these are the key to getting rid of amyloid in the brain. So they effectively attack amyloid in the brain. Amyloid is one of the proteins that's found in the brain of people with Alzheimer's disease. So they've released these 3 drugs. They have tremendous promise if everything about them is true, but we do know that drug companies often exaggerate a little bit when they release something, and they will take a little while before they're available in the UK. That's because you need to be in hospital while the drugs are given, because they're given by infusion, and you need monthly MRI scans, and we just don't have anywhere in the UK really the capacity to give all those people with dementia monthly MRI scans. You can only have it if you've got Alzheimer's disease, so it's not suitable for people with, say, Lewy body dementia or vascular dementia, and you can only have it if you're in a particular stage of the disease, and not if you're prone to bleeding, because they can cause brain bleeds and inflammation in the brain. So they're potentially very good. They're meant to slow down the rate of Alzheimer's by about 1/3 of Alzheimer's progression. But we haven't really seen their use in this country yet. It all comes from drug trials. They've been licensed. One of them, possibly more, have been licensed in America. But certainly with aducanumab, there was a bit of a shadow over its licensing process, that it was not done properly.
Wow, brilliant. I think it's interesting that we seem to have so much investment in different challenges that human beings face, for example, cancer, and yet there doesn't seem to be as much with different forms of dementia. What do you think about that?
That's a really good point. So until very recently, little money was put into dementia research. I can't remember the exact ratio, but it might have been 10-1, something like that, possibly even higher. There has been an increase since 2010-ish, the Prime Minister's Dementia Challenge. David Cameron made a dementia challenge and started increasing investment in research. And that's when Dendron came about, which is a big research network specifically for dementia and neurological disorders. So I think dementia has got more research money, but I don't think it's at parity with, say, cancer or heart disease, I don't think. But I'm not an expert in that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think if you are affected by it, then it's definitely something people talk about. But generally, you don't really hear that much people talking about it, do you? Really, until they sort of get older. There's still a lot of beliefs about it. So I heard someone in my family mention recently, oh, well, I just thought that was part of old age, getting dementia and memory loss. And I had to tell them, I was like, actually, it's not a part of old age, getting dementia, and it is preventable. Yeah. So do you think there needs to be more publicity about educating people, what we can do to lower our chances of getting dementia? Sort of like the stop smoking campaigns and things like that?
Going back to the beginning of your question, I think dementia is a really hidden disease. People with dementia, they tend to stay indoors, and when they've got really late stage dementia, they tend to go to institutions with locked doors, so people don't see them, and so it's not like a lot of other diseases where people go out and about, where they mix with people. I think not only do people with dementia forget, but we forget the people with dementia. You know, they're put away. Not literally anymore, you know, so much, but I think dementia is really overlooked. I think that's a very valid point you make. Absolutely, yes, there should be more publicity about it, and there have been organisations doing that. So I think Alzheimer's Research UK was publishing a leaflet that you could get online that was sort of telling you about how you could reduce your risk of dementia. I've been doing dementia reduction teaching for about a year, and in that time I think more and more people are beginning to realise that you can reduce dementia.
Wow.
Yes, but we need more publicity, and we're working with public health to do that.
So I'm chomping at the bit now. So you're saying that you're doing, for the last year, you've been doing keynote talks and going around to different places and talking about dementia reduction. So could you give us a little blast of what the sort of things might be, or talk to us about, give us a kind of condensed essence of what you're sharing when you're going around?
So I suppose the key thing is dementia is potentially preventable. So 40 to 60% of it's preventable. That still means some people will get it, you know, regardless, just because of luck, that sort of thing. So the big things that make a difference are hearing. So looking after our hearing, which I think is a massively not understood topic, but making sure that you get your hearing tested, wearing hearing aids if you get them. That's one thing. And I think that encompasses a whole load of other stuff, like making sure your ears are waxed, because that's no longer on the NHS. Treating things like diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, you know, making sure your heart is healthy, because if your heart is healthy, then your brain is much more likely to be healthy. Treating loneliness. I don't think it was previously realised how much loneliness, until the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, loneliness increases your risk of dementia.
Wow.
Then there are things like exercise. Exercise is massively important, and that works through a few different mechanisms, really. So one is because if you exercise, you make your heart healthier, you make your blood vessels healthier. So that's one mechanism. Another is that if you do resistance exercise and you build up healthy muscles, then those muscles produce chemicals that go to your brain and send a signal to your brain to do its tidying up, its gardening or whatever, to prune away what it doesn't need, to compost, you know, recycle the waste. Wow. and bring in fresh stuff. So building muscles is important, but also if we exercise, we tend to sleep better. Sleep is really important for our brain health. And another thing that exercise does for us is that if we have more muscle, we have better glucose regulation, and sugar in peaks is toxic for brain cells. So it sort of causes brain cells to age faster. They get more oxidative stress. And they can't use their energy supplies properly if there's too much sugar around. So the brain really needs sugar, but it needs it at a constant, steady, low level. And blood sugar spikes are bad for it. If you've got muscle mass, then that helps you keep that sugar more regulated. Obviously, other things help, like not eating huge spikes of sugar if you're diabetic, looking after your insulin and taking your medicine. But muscles are another tool in our armoury to keep our blood sugar in check. So what else is there? Avoiding things like smoking, tobacco, air pollution, those are all important. Eating a good diet. And here we talk about trying to eat a whole food diet, so not eating processed food, because processed foods are associated with increased risk of dementia, particularly processed meat. Wow. But other meat, sort of non-processed meat, small amounts are associated with less risk of dementia, and that seems to be because meat's a really important source of B12. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, I'd urge you to take B12. That's really important. I'm vegan. I'm not against vegans. I just think we should take our B12. Other vitamins are important. Chronic iron deficiency, vitamin D deficiency. What else is important? The other B vitamins, B6 and 9, and omega-3 fatty acids, which we can get from fish or algae or take as a supplement. So that's a sort of nutritional side of it. There's evidence that there was a community in America where they gave everyone a multivitamin, and the people who took the multivitamin compared to the people who didn't take the multivitamin had less dementia overall. I'm a bit wary of that approach because I think taking vitamins you don't need is unnecessary and expensive. So I think it's better to kind of target them to what you need. What are the other things? Cognitive stimulation, lifelong learning, really, really important. So education up to secondary school age reduces your risk of dementia, but so does lifelong learning. So things that people can do: learn a musical instrument, learn a foreign language, learn computer programming. Anything that stretches your brain, teaches you new things. Moving your brain in your body in space, like learning dancing or a new sport. That way you've got the exercise and the learning, and if you're doing it with friends, then you've got the social side too. So we should all be going to Zumba or ballroom dancing or something.
Amazing.
Wow. Those are really good tips, actually. And I think, you know, maybe you won't try all of them in one go, but if you know, would you say, which one would you recommend is probably going to have the biggest impact? You know, exercise, diet, which one? If you're going to make one change in your life now, you know, for this year, because obviously we always try and make changes and people, you know, fail if they do more than one, what would you recommend?
If you're deaf, I'd say get that sorted, get your hearing aids, if you or get it tested. But if you're not deaf, which most of us aren't hard of hearing, it's exercise. And you should be aiming, we should all be aiming for 30 minutes of exercise 5 times a week. So 150 minutes of moderate exercise. That's the sort that makes you breathless, a bit pink, a bit sweaty, and able to keep talking but not sing. But singing is also good for your brain.
That's amazing. Can I ask a question as well? Sorry, Jules, hold on to it. I was just going to say, so your work that you're doing now, where can people find you? How would people be able to find you?
Well, at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm doing the tier 2 training for people for. I'm employed indirectly by the commissioners to do the training for people who are HCAs, people in care homes, like activity coordinators or that sort of job, or any, I mean, there are nurses, there are pharmacists, all sorts of people come to that teaching, and that is on the Kerno Health website. If you wanted to come to that, it is open to other people, but if you're a carer for dementia, we tend to point people towards the ProMAS training, which is more tailored to carers. If you wanted me to come and speak to you, just send me an email. My email address is vicky.brown, just spelled like the colour, VICKY.brown, spelled like the colour, 32@nhs.net.
And we can put the link in all of this as well, but thank you.
But we're also looking at making a video, which we haven't done yet, to make more widely available, sort of to be on the council's website and the NHS website, just outlining these things. You can Google for it, but the videos you get tend to be very long, very scientific, or too brief and don't include enough information. So we're planning to make one for Cornwall that's more tailored.
I've actually been on that tier 2 training.
Oh, have you?
Yes, I did it a couple of years ago when I first started this role, and it's really good actually. It's a really
brilliant,
good foundation to have, I think, if you are interacting with anyone that has dementia or memory loss. I think, yeah, it's a great course to do.
Yeah. And you don't have to work for NHS or social care to do it. You can just go to the website and sign on.
Yeah.
And that's tell us the name of the website again.
It's Kerno Health.
Kerno Health.
And
okay, and that's for
dementia
anybody.
and delirium training.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Jules, is there anything else you want to ask?
Oh yeah, I was just going back to what you were saying, you know, the changes that people should make, and you mentioned getting your ears tested and how, you know, hearing has been linked to memory loss and dementia. Is that predominantly people who are not born deaf, I'm assuming, people that are losing their hearing in later life, or is it also does it also have an association with people who, you know, maybe are deaf from a young age?
Yeah. So it applies to people who have congenital deafness and people who acquire deafness earlier in life too. So whatever the cause of your deafness, it puts you at increased risk of dementia. But you can do something about it by wearing your hearing aids, or if you've got congenital deafness, I think you can get something like a cochlear implant or whatever if you're in the UK. Obviously, in other countries, not all these things are available.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Because if your one of your major senses is muted, if you like, you're not getting that stimulation, and you're switching off from, you know, from making conversation if you're continually struggling to hear. And I think people have a bit of shame as well about saying pardon. And you give up in the end.
Yeah.
So again,
it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You think people are going to get frustrated, so it really makes sense. And isn't there something, Jules, I'm trying to remember, but once a month in Truro you can go and get your hearing aids and get them fitted for free. The NHS are doing that.
Well, there is. Yeah, and I'm sure we can find a link and pop it up onto once this goes online. But I do remember something like that.
Yeah. Were you going to say something there, Vicky?
I was just going to say that's really good, because people don't always know where to turn, and I think it's good.
Yeah, so
you can also get your hearing tested for free. I recently had my ears, because I keep hearing this, you know, you need to check your hearing. So I got a bit worried, and I recently had mine checked for free at Specsavers. I had a test. So, you know, it is, you know, you can get it tested quite easily in Cornwall.
Excellent. Well, I think we're done. What do you reckon? That's so lovely to meet you, Vicky, and to talk with you, and really, really informative and inspirational, isn't it? Some simple lifestyle changes, or reassuring to some people that are already doing that to keep doing that.
I also think, like, because a lot of people, I liked that you said, you know, that it doesn't matter what age you make these changes, because I think sometimes you get to a certain age, what I've noticed, you know, going to the cafes, and you sort of think, oh, well, it's too late for me, I can't make it's not going to affect this disease anymore. And it's like, no, it will affect it, and it can have a positive effect.
Yeah. And so, for example, there's a Swedish study that showed the more social contact people have, which is why memory cafes are so important, the slower their dementia went downhill.
Wow.
So, you know, that shows the importance of having somewhere to go, because people do get really lonely. I've got a little mnemonic. I don't know if you can see it, for all the different things. I was wondering if it would help if I emailed it to you, and you could put it in the link.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be amazing. Really good. Well, thank you so much. It's been really inspiring.
You made it
such
so
a lovely lady.
Thank you. You made it so pain-free. This is about the fourth one I've done, and this was by far the easiest. And I think it was lovely having the two of you to chat to, and also seeing your faces, because a lot of them I've done without seeing faces. And you're so right.
Weird,
seeing faces makes a big difference.
It
We're
does,
human
doesn't it?
animals, aren't we? We're made to see faces.
We need
Yeah.
to be to see smiles and nods and all of that to feel
Yeah.
what we're saying and doing is good.
Yeah.
I think I saw
Aw.
you at a conference actually, and you were talking about this at a GP event.
I
last
was,
year or
yeah.
the year before, yeah,
I do
and it
for
was
them
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you, and
Well, nice to meet you. Thank
yeah,
you very
see
much
you
for the work
again.
you do. Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.